It was a stormy night, the kind where the wind howled and the rain lashed against everything in its path. My girlfriend, Lisa, and I were driving along the coast, trying to find our way back to the main road after a day of exploring. The storm had come out of nowhere, and visibility was almost zero. "Do you think we should keep going?" Lisa asked, her voice barely audible over the pounding rain. "I don't know," I replied, squinting through the windshield. "We need to find some shelter until this storm passes." As if on cue, a flash of lightning illuminated the silhouette of an old lighthouse in the distance. It stood tall and foreboding against the dark sky, its light long extinguished. "Look, a lighthouse," Lisa said, pointing. "Maybe we can wait out the storm there." I nodded, steering the car towards the narrow road that led to the lighthouse. The tires slipped on the wet gravel, but we managed to make it to the base of the towering structure. We grabbed our bags and dashed inside, relieved to be out of the storm. The interior of the lighthouse was dark and musty, the air thick with the smell of salt and decay. I fumbled for my flashlight, casting a dim beam across the room. It looked like no one had been here for years, dust-covered furniture, cobwebs hanging from the ceiling, and an eerie silence that made my skin crawl. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing through the empty space. "Is anyone here?" For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of the storm outside. Then, a faint light appeared at the top of the spiral staircase, and a figure emerged from the shadows. "Good evening," the man said, his voice surprisingly warm. He was an older gentleman, dressed in what looked like an old-fashioned lighthouse keeper's uniform. "What brings you here on such a stormy night?" "We got caught in a storm," Lisa explained, her voice trembling slightly. "We were hoping to find shelter until it passes." Of course," the man said, nodding. "You're welcome to stay here. My name is Edward, and I used to be the keeper of this lighthouse." "Thank you," I said, feeling a bit more at ease. "I'm Jack, and this is Lisa." Edward smiled, though there was something unsettling about it. "Come, make yourselves comfortable. It's been a long time since I've had visitors." We followed him up the staircase to a cozy room filled with old books, maps, and nautical instruments. A fire burned in the hearth, casting flickering shadows on the walls. It was almost too perfect, like a scene from an old movie. "Please, sit," Edward said, gesturing to a pair of worn armchairs. "Would you like some tea?" "That would be great," Lisa said, smiling gratefully. I could see she was starting to relax, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Edward busied himself with an old kettle and some mismatched teacups, chatting amiably about the lighthouse and its history. He told us stories of shipwrecks and storms, of brave sailors and their tragic fates. It was all very entertaining, but there was a darkness to his tales that sent shivers down my spine. As the night wore on, the storm outside seemed to grow fiercer. The wind howled, and the rain battered the windows. Every now and then, I thought I heard something else, a faint, ghostly wail carried on the wind. "Did you hear that?" I asked, glancing at Lisa. "Hear what?" she replied, looking puzzled. "I don't know. It sounded like someone crying." Edward's smile faded, and for a moment, a shadow crossed his face. "Ah, you must be hearing the ghosts of the shipwrecked sailors. They say their spirits still haunt these shores, seeking revenge for their untimely deaths." I laughed nervously, trying to brush it off as a joke. "Really? Ghosts?" "Yes," Edward said, his voice low and serious. "You see, this lighthouse has a dark history. The previous keeper before me had a sinister habit of luring ships to their doom to collect the treasures that washed ashore. The sailors who perished in those wrecks are said to haunt this place, seeking revenge on anyone they can find." Lisa and I exchanged uneasy glances. "That's quite a story," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "It's more than just a story," Edward replied, his eyes glinting in the firelight. "But don't worry. As long as you stay inside, you'll be safe." His words did little to comfort me. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this lighthouse and its keeper than met the eye. The storm showed no signs of letting up, so we had no choice but to stay the night. We settled into the old armchairs, trying to make ourselves comfortable. Edward continued to regale us with stories, but my mind kept drifting back to the ghostly wails and the eerie feeling that we weren't alone. At some point, I must have drifted off, because I was jolted awake by a loud crash. I sat up, heart pounding, and looked around. The room was dark, the fire reduced to glowing embers. Lisa was still asleep in the chair next to me. I listened intently, straining to hear over the storm. There was again a low, mournful wail, followed by the sound of something scraping against the walls. I stood up, my flashlight in hand, and made my way to the door. "Jack?" Lisa's voice was groggy and confused. "Where are you going?" "I heard something," I whispered. "Stay here. I'll be right back." I stepped into the hallway, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The sound was coming from downstairs, near the entrance. I moved cautiously, every creak of the floorboards making me jump. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I saw a figure standing in the doorway. It was Edward, but he looked different, older, more sinister. His eyes gleamed with a malevolent light. "What are you doing down here?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just checking on something," he replied, his smile twisted and eerie. "It's not safe to wander around at night, you know. The spirits are restless." A chill ran down my spine. I heard something. "What's going on?" Edward's expression darkened. "There are things in this lighthouse you wouldn't understand, Jack. It's best if you go back upstairs and forget about it." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I moved closer, my flashlight illuminating the symbols carved into the doorframe. They looked ancient, and I realized with a jolt that they were similar to the ones Edward had described in his stories. "You're not telling us everything, are you?" I said, my voice trembling with anger and fear. "What are these symbols? What are you hiding?" Edward's face twisted into a snarl. "You're too curious for your own good, boy. This lighthouse is cursed, and you've brought it upon yourselves by coming here." Before I could react, the door behind him burst open, and a rush of cold air flooded the room. Ghostly figures appeared, their faces twisted in agony. They were the sailors, their bodies mangled and torn by the sea. "Run!" I shouted, turning to race up the stairs. Lisa was waiting at the top, her eyes wide with terror. "What's happening?" "We need to get out of here," I said, grabbing her hand. "Now!" We bolted down the hallway, the ghostly wails growing louder behind us. The lighthouse seemed to come alive, the walls closing in and the floor shifting beneath our feet. I could feel the cold breath of the spirits on my neck, their fingers clawing at my back. We stumbled into a room at the far end of the hall and slammed the door shut. I shoved a heavy dresser against it, my heart pounding in my chest. "What the hell is going on?" Lisa cried, her voice shaking. "Edward's been luring ships to their doom," I said, my breath coming in ragged gasps. "The spirits of the sailors are seeking revenge, and they're coming for us." The room was filled with old nautical charts and logbooks, the remnants of the lighthouse's dark history. I scanned the room, looking for any way out. There was a small window, but it was barred shut. "We're trapped," Lisa whispered, tears streaming down her face. I moved to the window, trying to pry the bars loose, but they wouldn't budge. The door behind us rattled, the spirits trying to force their way in. I felt a wave of hopelessness wash over me. We were going to die here, in this cursed lighthouse. Then, I noticed a hatch in the ceiling, partially hidden by a stack of old books. "Look," I said, pointing. "There's a way out." Lisa helped me move the books, and I climbed onto a chair to push the hatch open. It led to a narrow, winding staircase that disappeared into the darkness above. "Come on," I said, helping Lisa up. "We need to get to the top." We climbed the stairs, the air growing colder and the ghostly wails echoing around us. The staircase seemed to go on forever, winding higher and higher. Finally, we emerged onto the top platform of the lighthouse, the storm raging around us. The beam of the lighthouse was still, casting an eerie glow over the crashing waves below. I moved to the edge, looking for any sign of a way down. "We're trapped," Lisa said, her voice barely audible over the wind. "There's no way out." "We have to keep moving," I said, my mind racing. "There has to be a way." The ghostly figures appeared around us, their faces twisted with anger and pain. They moved closer, their hands reaching out to drag us into the abyss. Then, I saw it, a small rowboat, bobbing in the water below. It was our only chance. "We need to get to the boat," I said, grabbing Lisa's hand. "We can climb down the rocks." We moved to the edge of the platform, the wind threatening to knock us off balance. Carefully, we began to climb down the jagged rocks, the cold spray of the sea stinging our faces. The ghostly wails grew louder, and I felt a cold hand brush against my back. I lost my footing and slipped, my fingers scrambling for a hold. Lisa screamed, her grip slipping from mine. "Hold on!" I shouted, my heart pounding in my chest. With a final, desperate effort, I managed to grab a ledge and pull myself back up. Lisa was clinging to the rocks below, her face pale with fear. I reached down and pulled her up, our hands trembling with the effort. We made our way down to the rowboat, the ghostly figures swirling around us. I pushed the boat into the water, and we climbed in, paddling frantically to get away from the lighthouse. The spirits followed us, their wails echoing across the water. I could see Edward standing on the platform, his face twisted in rage. "You can't escape," he shouted, his voice carrying over the storm. "The curse will follow you." But we didn't stop. We paddled until our arms ached, until the lighthouse was nothing but a distant silhouette against the stormy sky. Finally, we reached the shore, collapsing on the wet sand, gasping for breath. The storm began to abate, the rain slowing to a drizzle. "We made it," Lisa said, her voice trembling with relief. I nodded, my mind still reeling from the ordeal. We had escaped the lighthouse, but the memory of that night would haunt us forever. As we walked back to the main road, I glanced over my shoulder at the distant lighthouse, its light now extinguished. The curse might have followed us, but we had survived. And that was all that mattered.